I got here with me Jerry. What's your last name? Jerry
DaBrescia.
He's Italian. He's from Italy.
Yeah.
And Jerry, I just want to ask you a question. You're saying that there's a new mystery virus in China. Do you think what happened in 2020 could repeat again?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
And do you think like this, because they're saying this new virus is going to be, way worse than Corona. Corona was just the warm-up. What are your thoughts on what they're saying on the news? What they're saying on the news right now?
Well, when you ask me about what happened in 2020, there's two related things that I think of. I think of the virus and how we reacted to the virus. The virus, I think, was true and detectable and provable.
Yeah.
How we react to it, I think, was inappropriate. And the inappropriate from the political things, what I was thinking about, that'll happen all over again.
Interesting.
Because that's part of the Cultural Revolution of people telling us what to do.
Okay.
The virus itself is as difficult to sort out as the re-election, as Biden's election.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, there's so much baloney going on.
Interesting.
There is a virus, it's killing people.
Yeah.
I think that's provable.
Yeah. Okay.
What can be done about it, and how quickly it'll be done, and how it'll be handled.
Yeah.
Hopefully we learned something from before.
Okay.
Who knows?
And they're saying, isn't it interesting that these viruses come around every election year?
Well,
So the other day I saw Jerry at the library and was able to get him on camera. Me and my family have had this little joke that he looks like Fauci. So I made this funny video and shared it with others as a little joke. But as people saw the video, they wanted an encore. Jerry also had given me his card showing he wanted to talk more. As I prayed about it, God told me to sit down and do a formal interview with Jerry. Some of you may be wondering, what does this have to do with ministry? At the end of the video, I will show you why God had me sit down with Jerry. God used Jerry that day, brothers and sisters.
Welcome on, everybody. It's good to be here. This is your host, Paul Juberg, and we have with us today a special guest, Jerry DaBrescia from Italy. Last week I did a little video, and it was a fun video. It was just about 2 minutes, and we had some Italian music in the background, and people were saying, "Is that Tony Fauci's brother? Are we gonna have another pandemic?" And we're here to assure you that Jerry, he doesn't work for the CDC. He has no connection to Wuhan or gain of function research. None of that. He's not his brother. He's not no relation. You can assure the audience, Jerry, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, beyond doubt.
So, listen. We're here today in the Hancock Museum. It's a beautiful place. After the interview, I will show you guys just briefly what this place looks like. A lot of antiques, a lot of trinkets. And Jerry, I've seen Jerry before. My sister, welcome on, Rose. My sister's seen you before. My sister used to live here back in the day. She lived here about a year ago.
Oh, really?
And when she saw you, she said, "That guy looks just like Tony Fauci," And so, I've seen Jerry around, and the other day I seen him walking in here, and he was lifting some heavy tables, working his biceps. And the way he was turning the library into his gym, it was the way he walks around. I could tell this is a man of influence. This is a man of great stature. He walks around like an OG, like a boss. And I seen him driving his Lincoln around, and I seen this, and he's turning the library into his gym. He's working out over here, and people they're asking me questions. They're asking me, who is this Jerry guy? Who is he? And so we're going to take a few moments today. We have the privilege of interviewing Jerry. And Jerry, if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are,
Who I am.
and a little bit about of your background.
Okay, well, I was born in Hancock in 1944, before the end of the war. My father was in the Philippines, waiting to go into Japan at that time. Went to school here in Hancock, graduated in '62 from here, then went to Syracuse to A, get out of Hancock for a little bit, and B, keep my father happy. C, became going into the service in 1966. And that was really a transforming time for me. I was lucky enough to get into officer training in the Air Force, and ended up with a great assignment at Headquarters Tactical Air Command, working for an inspirational kind of guy that had flown with the 8th Air Force in World War II. So I did my little bit back then, and came back to Hancock to a job that I had left just before I went in with a local plant, Becton Dickinson. That plant, in the future, employed almost 800 people here in Hancock, and I had a series of jobs here over about a year and a half, and then got promoted to New Jersey. Great job down there, but I wasn't too attuned to suburban life, which you'll get through the rest of this interview. And also I wanted to have my own business. And so I gave up a good job to get a lousy business, and went from that into insurance sales. So for perspective, a friend of mine said, insurance sales, how are you going to explain that to somebody? I said, it's very easy. My dream was to be a used car salesman, so I didn't have much of a bump in the road there. Did that for a number of years, retired, that's almost 20 years ago now. About 1 year into retirement, a gentleman who had moved here from New York asked if I would join in his effort to do something with what they call the Hancock Partners, which is how a lot of people know me now. He's since passed, a gentleman who was given credit for saving Chrysler Motor Corporation, named �11𝓘𝓷𝓽𝓮𝓬, friend of 𝓖𝓮𝓻𝓪𝓵𝓭. And so I served on his board with the Education Foundation. I was president of the partners for quite a while. And since then, I'm still with the partners, president of the library board here, just trying to keep occupied and enjoying being here during a time where there's huge change. There's always a huge change with small towns, usually downward, but there's a huge change in America, and trying to figure out what villages and towns every place are doing, from the Binghamtons and Syracuses of the world to the Hancocks.
So Jerry, it says that on your card it says you're emeritus and president. So you're president of, it sounds, you have partnerships with different organizations. You have
the Hancock Partners. What's the term like?
Emeritus and president. So if you could break down a little bit like.
Oh, emeritus, yeah. Well, I'm the past president, still giving Mike all the advice that I can. The poor guy, he still takes it gracefully, but we're all working for the same objective. And I think maybe the reason I met you was this thing with a program called Heart and Soul, which is a program from the Orton Foundation up in Vermont for small towns and medium-sized cities, where you turn things upside down. You have the community say what they want, try to help figure out ways to buy it, and work with the government to get it down, instead of hiring the expert from 40 miles away with a patch on his sleeve who tells you what you need, and then you go do it. The theory being it ought to work better if it comes from the ground up. And so we're thinking about doing that in Hancock, and that's why he saw me carrying tables around as opposed to his theory building up my body.
Well, friends, the way that Jerry was doing a workout, we know that he's going to live many more years. You know, he probably has he's probably in excellent condition with his heart and everything. And I just want to ask you a couple more questions, Jerry. So you're 79. You're going to be 80 soon, right? Like
next September.
Next September. So Jerry's been around the block a few times, brothers and sisters. He's seen many things in his life. Like he said, he's been connected with the Navy and insurance, and he's a president. He's emeritus. And We want to ask Jerry, because we're living in a time, and like Jerry said, a time of great change. We're living in a time where a lot of people are depressed. And it's ironic, I said this the other day, we're in a time of social media, the information age. We're bombarded with information, people on their WhatsApp, on their Instagram, Facebook, all these different platforms. But they said that loneliness is a new epidemic. They said people are lonely. They say that people are basically socially inept. Gen Z is in a crisis. This is what they're saying out. This is what they're studying. This is what scientists are finding. We're in a time of inflation, and there's a political divide. Like Jerry knows, I run the other way. I run the other direction when it comes to politics. I'm not MAGA. I'm not Sleepy Joe. I'm running the other direction. But we see a political divide, and we see things are shaking. Things are shaking, and so. Well, we want to ask Jerry today, because he's been around the block a few times. He's seen many things. He has stories. And Jerry, I want to ask you, in your life, something that you've seen that has given you inspiration, something that you've seen that's giving you hope, or maybe that can give hope to somebody else.
I think if there's anything inspirational in my life, it was probably the gentleman I worked for at Langley Air Force Base. He was a colonel. We were at a headquarters. It was during the Vietnam War, and I had the honor of serving with a number of people who served in World War II. Oddly enough, I was at the tail end of that era. And this gentleman and his perception of right and wrong, good and bad, and what's important, impressed me very much. There's a phrase in the Air Force of the mission, and the mission, and that's the width and breadth of your reason for living. And this guy exemplified that, and the way he dealt with people, there was no rank with Colonel Snyder. You were in the Air Force, you were in there with him, and you were there to do a job, and it became very simple to do it. And the standards were incredibly high. I mean, we met at like 6:30 every morning for the briefing, and we had to know what went on all the time. And but to be around somebody that was like that and see him operate at my age versus his age changed my perception of a lot of things. And I guess that'd be my story in regard to that. The other gentleman who was similar in his way, but different, was this 𝓚 that I mentioned. And he went from, I think it was Reading, Pennsylvania, to being CEO of an advertising firm in New York, and close personal friend of 𝓖𝓮𝓻. And he had the same trait that Colonel Snyder did: keep it simple, know right from wrong, and act on it.
What are your values, and what motivates you?
What are my values? Now there's and 25
you were talking about Colonel Snyder, and he had you could see that he had like a moral fabric, and right or wrong, was distinctive with him. For you, what are your moral values, and what motivates you as well?
The best thing I could give you in terms of moral values is I'll give you a duality here, if that's the right word. Colonel Snyder impressed me by losing the opportunity to be a general, by making a decision where he grounded almost every airplane in the Air Force because of a problem with the radar, the ground control radar. They were not registered properly. At our headquarters, we had responsibility for like 20-some bases, and he issued an order that was not politically to his advantage for being a brigadier general.
Yeah.
And knowing that, sitting here is one thing. Knowing the people who invested their lives to get to that point was another thing. And that came about later in life with an incident when I was working in a corporation, where there's doing what's the expedient thing to do, and there's doing what's the right thing to do, which can have a negative effect on what you do. And I guess what I thought of the rest of my life, I still have to look at myself in the mirror when I shave. And the effect on the people of making that expedient decision led me to, that's one of the reasons I got out of that corporation. And that wasn't their typical method of operation, but I knew that would come up and up and up. Your life was in their hands. I'd rather be in my hands, so I work for myself.
Gotcha. The other week when I was talking with Jerry, he said something interesting that I had found to be true. And he said, history repeats, And when we look at America right now, we see, and you were talking you mentioned this briefly to me, how, there's income inequality, the gap between the rich and the poor is becoming wider and wider. And it's interesting when somebody studies the history of France, what happened before the French Revolution, there was this extremity in income inequality, a big gap between the wealthy and the poor. It's also interesting because there's a statement from an author that's a favorite author of mine. She says, thinking men and women of all classes have their attention fixed upon the events taking place about us. They observe the intensity that is taking possession of every earthly element. It seems like things are getting more and more intense. They recognize that something great and decisive is about to take place, and that the world is on the verge of a stupendous crisis. When you look at the world today, you look at thinking men and women, you have colonels, generals in the military, you have teachers, professors, you have historians, you have scientists, you have thinking men and women of all classes. It's very interesting. Politicians, people in government, they see that there's something, it's almost like there's a buildup, something's getting ready to be released. Some kind of crisis, something on the horizon. I'm letting you guys know, history repeats. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he said, as he's observed Trump, he said he's the most devastating debater since Abraham Lincoln. Those were his words.
The guy is, Trump is he gets pretty rough on the stage,
Yeah.
He call you names, he'll probably make up a name for Jerry. What's he called, the guy in Florida? Sanctimonious. He's always nervous Nancy. He's always making names. And Robert F. Kennedy said he's the most devastating debater since Abraham Lincoln. And
History does repeat. I used to actually, at one point, I was involved in finance, and I was making trades. Every day the markets open up, they make trades in the market, and they're all looking at patterns. It's like patterns, and it's amazing because they all study history. To make the big trade, you got to study history. And so it's not just in financial, it's in real-time history. I'm letting you guys know history repeats.
And what the Lord has told me, friends, since I have left working in the financial sector, God has told me, Paul, I want you to look for patterns in the Bible. I want you to look for divine patterns.
people are talking about they're seeing similarities, the divide in this nation, politically and otherwise, and they're comparing it even to what happened before the Civil War. Right. And my question for you, Jerry, is, and these like I said, generals, professors, these are men and women all across the world, not just America. They're seeing this. What do you think about that, Jerry? Do you believe that what they're onto something, that we could see something even at the level of a civil war happen in America again?
Yeah. Right. You want to write that down?
I know it's a serious question, but yeah, we have to get to the root of the matter, and I want to also give a message to hope to the viewers, because hope and inspiration is always critical. But you would agree with what
I would agree with what he's saying. I think there's more than, and I would agree with what he's saying about Trump.
Yeah.
No quibbling. Okay. I would also say that he is a reaction to some activity and a mentality towards the Hancocks and deposits and small towns of the world from politics in general.
Yeah.
You've heard the phrase flyover territory?
Yeah.
Don't worry about the kids being killed in Kansas?
Yes.
Some of the anger you see, if there's a common trait we're all acting on now, it's an anger against the flyover territory type comments, against pick whatever you want from Trump comments,
Yeah.
And I think between the shootings that are going on, which are a bad sign, they're not a sign, they're fact, and the growing disparity between the poor and the wealthy, and I see less and less, no matter which party, of an opportunity for kids to go from a small Hancock, like at the White Eisenhower or something like that, to go up, unless it's in the military, because those entry-level jobs that were always available, like when I got out of school, aren't going to be available now for a number of reasons. In addition to those entry-level jobs, go to a McDonald's and talk to the machine to order coffee. I understand why, and I understand everybody needs a basic income. How you do it has not been resolved. And how you provide everybody the health care that they should get and pay for it has not been resolved. So it just keeps multiplying, and a lot of people still, this is kind of a whatever remark, they live their life, they get their paycheck, they raise their kids, they never think about a lot more than the next paycheck and getting the clothes for the kid and doing whatever. And they do stay out of politics, and we need people to be not necessarily involved with politics, but knowledgeable about what they want and why they want it.
And influence. We can. Our voice can be heard.
Our voice can be heard.
Our voice can be heard. We can make an influence. Jerry, as somebody who comes from Italy, I know that there's a lot of devout Roman Catholics, because that's where the Vatican is. Are you a Catholic yourself? Are you a Roman Catholic? A lot of people find comfort and hope in religion. Not to put you on the spot, but are you a pretty devout Catholic, or kind of like shaky, a little shaky? Okay.
A little shaky, yeah.
Listen, the Bible says, there's actually a prophecy in Revelation 18:4, and it says, "Come out of Babylon, my people." And I believe that some of the most sincere Christians are Catholics, but the Vatican, I know, and I've seen documentation. The Vatican, there's a lot of deep corruption in the Vatican, and that's why people like Jerry, they get a little shaky. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of Catholics, and a lot of good people, a lot of good Christian people, but they know something shady is happening in the Vatican. And there's a Catholic, he actually came out, he's a Roman Catholic, and he said that he's seen, he's come out with documentation showing connections with the CIA and some terrorist organizations in the Vatican. Like, this is something that he's released.
The author that Paul is referring to is Paul L. Williams, a Roman Catholic. God is using him to expose corruption in the Vatican and its connection to the CIA and extreme Islamic groups such as Al-Qaeda and even Hamas. God is raising up people like him to expose the darkness, because the Vatican truly is that mother church seated on 7 hills, serving that wine of her fornication unto the kings of the earth.
What's interesting is some of these same individuals, people who work in the CIA, we're in a great controversy between good and evil. Behind the scenes, there's Jesus Christ, there's the devil, and the devil has his agents, and Jesus Christ has his agents. And there's people in the government. There's a individual, and he came out and he said, there's corruption, and he actually said we talk to entities to get information, like to help us and to go forward.
In March of 2001, 6 months before 9/11, The Lone Gunman premiered its first episode called Pilot, in which a commercial airliner was hijacked and remote controlled by a computer.
There is a government conspiracy to fly this commercial airliner drone into the World Trade Center,
trying to kill a father and son. What's strange is that many of the same details seen in this story are repeated by the testimony of 𝓣𝓱𝓮 as he tells of his encounter of a levitating monolith at range 19, Fort Bragg. What's even more shocking is that in May of 2023, the film Leave the World Behind premiered, showing an impending cyber attack on America, with many people saying that the Obamas are telling us what is to come. In John 14:29, Jesus says, "And now I have told you before it come to pass, that when it is come to pass, ye might believe."
Is Satan imitating Christ? Building 7 was no ordinary office building. It housed offices of the Department of Defense, DoD, the CIA. I'll say that again. The CIA was intricately involved with the demolition of Building 7, the IRS, and Secret Service. Building 7 also held files related to numerous Wall Street investigations, many of which were not backed up elsewhere When Building 7 collapsed on 9/11, that was the icing on the cake. To many, that the official narrative we have been fed is skewed. Even Spike Lee said that when you juxtaposition the way Building 7 fell to the ground, when you pit it next to other building collapses that were demolitions, it's like you're looking at the same thing. Spike Lee was even featured praying on his knees to God for the interpretation of the 9/11 enigma. We live in a world filled with signs. Signs are important. In fact, if you're in a dangerous neighborhood and a gangster throws up a gang sign and you don't know and you don't interpret it correctly, it could cost your life. According to the Bible, this world is a dangerous neighborhood. Satan is walking up and down in it, Job 1:7. The gang members, Deep State, threw up a sign on 9/11, especially with the detonation of Building 7. You see, Building 7 is code for taking out God's people. Even Prince, who is a known Satanist with his third eye, has a song called 7, in which he says all 7 will watch them fall. They stand in the way of love, and we will smoke them all with the intellect and savoir-faire. This group called 7 stand in the way of the New World Order. In the Bible, God's people are called a building, 1 Corinthians 3:9. Further, the number 7 is very significant as God's end-time people are sealed with the observance of the Sabbath, the 7th day of the week. Hence, you can also call God's end-time people Building 7.
This is they've been open. So there's good people everywhere. You know, God has his people in Rome, and obviously it's like, what do they say? Like every tree has good apples and bad apples, right? Mm-hmm. Every tree, different tree. So you have in every religion you have good people and bad people. But at the end of the day, you know, it's very interesting because there's a prophecy in the Bible, and it says, Jerry, that God, he's going to pour out his spirit. He's going to give people dreams.
And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit.
You ever heard about that? He's going to give people dreams and visions. Joel 2:28.
Repeat that again. God does what?
So in the Old Testament, there is a prophecy. It says God will pour out.
That God will pour out his spirit. In late 2023, over 200 Muslims dreamt of Jesus in one night. This is a fulfillment of Joel 2:28, and I expect to see even a more striking fulfillment of this in the year 2024.
Actually, this is very interesting. What we're going to do, we thank you for your time, Jerry, in the interview, and for the people to learn more about you, who you are as a president, as a emeritus. And we want to give you, Jerry, a free gift. There's a book that was written a long time ago. I'm going to pull it up now. There's a book that was written a long time ago. Some of you are familiar with this book. It's called The Great Controversy. And the woman that wrote this book, Jerry, she died a long time ago. You can look at the copyright. And it was originally written in the 1800s. I think this book was originally written in 1888. I don't think they had electricity back then. You're talking about these people over here, the lady who got stuck in her room. What year was that? 1860?
1861.
Okay. So this is written a long time ago. She had, I'm not even making this up, okay? This lady, she had a vision. She had multiple visions. God just showed her many things that were going to happen in America years later. And the CIA actually knows about this book. The CIA knows about the book. It's like their secret game plan. Their secret game plan is revealed in this. The CIA knows about the book. Pope Francis knows about this book. There's top Jews, Kabbalah Jews know about this book. Their whole game, a lot of history in this book, but the end chapters is actually there, like what's going to happen. What's going to happen? It's a fascinating book. We're going to give this to you, Jerry, as a gift. And brothers and sisters, once again, I thank you for tuning in. It was a privilege, Jerry, to meet with you, to talk with you.
At the beginning of this video, I said God had used Jerry in a very special way that day. Let me show you something before I let you go. You see, I live in a bad neighborhood. God has been taking me through a season of fiery trials. 1 Peter 4:12. Every day I have been praying for a way to get out of here. A sign was given.
Where you're living, did you tell me you were living in the old apartments?
Yeah, that's a place that's, I'm trying to get out.
That,
Up there on the hill.
yeah, that's what I went to school. There was a beautiful building there. It was the school. And if you Google it, you'll find that building. It was right where you said it.